Today I wanted to talk a little bit about something really magical that happened to me. I'm saying magical because I think that life is magical, but I think that we're so busy in our everyday problems that we often neglect to see how magical life is. And I often remind myself that life is magical, that a child is a magical thing, that a birth is a magical thing, that a pregnancy is a magical thing, that a good marriage is a magical thing, a good friend is a magical thing. And I think that when I'm saying this, you might think, okay, well, how is it related to your story? Well, for me, my son is a magical child. Before Ariel David was born, I already knew that the doctors were under the impression that something might be wrong. And I had made it very clear very quickly to the doctors that I am interested to help my son heal and to help him have a good life. And this was my request as well, that I know what I need to do to get ready. And on the day that he was born, they were ready for whatever will come with his birth. And thank God for that, because he got immediate assistance when he was born, and he needed that. He did not breathe, and he was ventilated immediately. And when they allowed me to come to see him, after they took care of him, they allowed me to enter to the unit. I remember that I was stunned by the light. It was so bright in that room. And the sounds, there were so many sounds of beeping going around from machines and from different monitors, and it was so loud. And all I could think was, how can a tiny little baby be in such an environment? It's so hostile. It was like being in the center of Times Square in the middle of Russia. Beeping and lights and everything was going on, and such a hassle. And as I approach his bed, I could see his tiny little body exhausted, just lying there, completely exhausted by what has happened to him. And I approached him, and the closer I got to him, the more the lights and the noises just became a background, and I could sense I'm entering into a very, very peaceful inner state. And all I could see was his light. I didn't see a ventilation machine. I didn't see any interruption. All I saw was his beautiful light that was just coming out of him, out of his soul. And I knew that was the moment I needed to tell him of my decision, so to reinforce him. So I came very, very close and very still, and I said to him, Mommy's here, and don't worry, you're gonna have an amazing life, and whatever you have, we're gonna deal with it and we'll get through it. You will be healed. And his tiny little finger was wrapped around my thumb, and I could feel on some level, I knew that his body and knew that things are going to be okay. And that was the promise I gave to my son.
That no matter what he has, he will have an amazing life, surrounded by his loving family.
Once I made my promise to my son, it was like a beacon of a lighthouse, calling me to go forwards no matter what. And that was the beginning of my Storia-Map. So Storia is a method that I developed to help me and my son to stay on track. I called it Storia because it has a dual meaning in Italian. It means a story and also means history. And I like that dual meaning because for me that meant that no matter what the history is, no matter what my son was born with, the future is not set in stone.
Why do we need to visualize? For me, visualization is like really a core part of my life. When I was little, and I spent a long time with my grandparents, when I went to sleep, my grandpa used to tell me this story, always the same story, about this girl that was living with her grandparents in the woods, and she would go just traveling in the daytime, exploring. And he would always say to her, well, if you reach any place that you have a challenge, you can always rub the ring and imagine the solution you want, and it will happen. And now tell me what are you encountering, and what are you visualizing? What are you seeing? What's the solution? It was this kind of thinking that I was really trained to think in that way from really, really very early ages of my life. And it was that kind of thinking that when I was confronted with this huge challenge of how do you take on a child that you know that has a challenge, and create this life you want to create for him. And for me, it was both emotionally very, very strong to be confronted with that, but also on a spiritual level and on an intellectual level, it was a challenge that I always said to myself, there always is a solution, I'm just not seeing it. So I need to find tools to help me to see it.
And so we use these tools to create the map, but the map is the structure that holds that. That is the bridge between the vision and where we are at this moment.
The work that most of is coming out of my studio now, these sort of pieces, they're two-dimensional artwork that I feed fiber optics through or use light in some way. And what I'm trying to do with this work is trying to have some sort of impact on the user, okay? Beyond just it functioning as a light or as a piece of artwork. But I believe, based on a lot of research, that art has the potential to help heal and help people who are suffering from stress or anxiety or in some sort of medical care. And that's really the focus that I've been going towards. Boy, I really blew that right there, didn't I?
So going back to my own journey with my son, I wanted to create an image for Ariel David that he can relate to, that he can see himself in a new way. Because it's not enough that I saw him free of a ventilation and really living a full life, I wanted him to see this possibility as well. And when he reached the age of 10, he had already begun to breathe on his own in the daytime, which was a miracle. And really thanks to the yoga and the pujas and many, many things that we did and continue to do. But I wanted him to see himself without any need of ventilation. And so I said to myself, well, how can I translate this image? And I've contacted a very talented artist that I knew his work. And his name was Massimo, and I knew his work. I've contacted him and I asked him, would you be willing to paint my son, his portrait? And he said, yes, of course I would. And I felt a little bit self-conscious of the next question. And I said, well, he said, can you send me a picture? And I said, well, the thing is, I need you to paint him in the future. And there was silence. And he said, what do you mean in the future? I said, well, the thing is that I want to translate to my son how I envision him without a ventilator, having a full life, traveling the world, teaching. And he said, but I don't understand. And I said to him, well, you see, he doesn't have the command to breathe, but he did learn to breathe on his own at the age of 10. And I want to encourage him to take it to the next level, to imagine. And when I looked up, I saw he was crying. And I say I looked up because at that point I was crying too. And I think when you hold an intent for so long, for so many years, you cannot but cry when you think you reach your destiny. And for me, that was a real focal point in our Storia-Map, was the place that my son became an active partner. Not only was he showing me before the path to yoga, but now we started to think, how can we do this story together? And so Massimo painted him in the future, and that started a whole story. And this painting is in our living room. It's in the area where we practice daily our morning yoga routine. And that became part of our routine to talk about the Storia-Map at the end of the yoga session. When our little David was about 1 year old, we had a very dramatic hospitalization. And I say dramatic because we already had some kind of routine. We were already having some kind of life that was accepting the fact that he was ventilated, yet building a full life. And we had rituals that were empowering him, and we started to do a lot of things that were improving him. And this sudden emergency, this life-threatening situation that he was suddenly entered, was a big shock. It was a big shock because I thought that we had already left the hospital. It was not something I could foresee. And I realized that the love that I have for my son, which is the core for everything that I do, is not enough. I needed knowledge. I needed to learn how to communicate to others, doctors, teachers, even to my son, how to communicate the things that I believe in order to create the conditions for him to live a full life. And
I needed a way to reach that place. So I knew from the Storia-Map that I needed to fill in the gaps in my map. So I had point A, where we were when he was born, and I had point B, where I want to reach. But all the way, how can we help his body to heal? How can we help his spirit to be strong? How can we help his emotional side to be full of happiness? In light of what he was facing, it was a bit of a paradox, right? So when you're facing life-threatening conditions and you do face pain, there is darkness in that place. There is room for doubt. So how do you transform that into some joy? And this is a really interesting concept because for me, it was what changed my life, this concept, to shift into a direction that is positive, but still can see the places of the pain, of the fear. And I knew that there are teachings. I knew there were teachers that were really good at doing this transformation. It was very clear to me that I needed a teacher and methods to purify these emotions and transform them into different kinds of emotions, happier emotions. I was really lucky to be able to meet very good teachers from Buddhism, from Hinduism, from Christianity, from Judaism, and each one gave me teachings that I could use in my life. And I'm very thankful to them, especially to Patrizio Paoletti, who was the first teacher that I've met and studied with for 6 years, self-awareness, and his tools were the ones who led me to go into a more deeper teaching for me, which was yoga. And I was very curious, and I used to say to my son when he was very, very young and full of pain, sometimes I used to say to him, you are beyond this pain. You are beyond this body. Even though now you are suffering, there is a whole life that is waiting for you to explore. And I think this what made me realize that I want my teacher, or the guru that eventually I asked to be my guru, was Dr. Jayant Kumar Bhaduri of Bhrigu Yoga, Master Yoga of Bhrigu Yoga. Because I realized that it was there in this teaching that I found my peace, my happiness.
The thing is this, that very important to practice every day. It is for self, to free from physical problems and from mental problems. It is important to balance the energy system. That is there.
I definitely agree, and I think your answer is it's very important what you said. And I saw with my son that he started when he was very young, at age 5, and by the time he met you, he was already 8, and he's now 16 and a half, and he does his yoga practice every day, and he is the one who wants to do it because, children, you can't force them to do anything. You can suggest to them, and he loves to do it because it makes him feel good. And so he's the one who does it before going to school. I don't have to say, if I'm very busy and I don't have time, he says to me, no, you come and do this with me. He feels how good it is when you do it. So for me, this is the best way to see how well it is.
It's very important. I feel always, one thing is very important that I must share, that first of all, yoga is there, energy systems are there, but I always believe that I'm not doing anything. I always ask to my father that what is there. So he said that someone else is doing the things. So even though something happened by me, even though I'm not doing, energies are there. I'm just focusing with the energy system that it must be there. So we will free from ego. It is very important. We should remember one thing, that we all are one. Everyone, you, everyone, all the creatures, they all are one. So when everyone is one, so it means, it shows that I'm not doing for someone different, someone, another person. Doing something for the self. This is one thing. And another thing is this, that always make it clear for self that some energies are active. So you will always free from ego things. You will live simple life and easy life.
מה יש לך להגיד לנו הבוקר? מה יש לך להגיד לנו הבוקר?
לפעמים.
מה יש לך להגיד לנו הבוקר? חמוד?
בוקר, יש לי בר מצווה בשבוע הבא, ואני מתרגש. בוקר.
אריאל דוד. אריאל דוד, אתה מתרגש חמוד מהבר מצווה? כן? כן. אתה מתרגש? אני גם מתרגשת. אני מאוד מאוד מתרגשת ומאוד שמחה. מאוד שמחה. חמוד. חמוד. כל הכבוד. And for us, the next step is Ariel David's surgery, where the diaphragm paste will be placed. And this is something that we've been working towards for 4 years, dreaming about for 16 years. So for us, this is a great moment. Of course, there is, quite naturally, there are fears around that. It's a big change and how it will be, but our belief that it will be good and the support that we're getting from the Bahaduri family with the pujas, this is giving us the strength to go forward to the next step. And so, the Storia-Map is always active, it's always alive because it's working with the God spark that is within us all.
I'm sharing with you an incredible story that began really in a moment of near death, and to choose life. And that was not coming from bravery. I didn't feel brave. I didn't feel strong. I just felt full of love. And I felt protected. I knew somehow, in a very unexplainable way, I knew that there's no way that God will give me something that He will not give me the tools. And that's something I knew internally. It wasn't something I heard at home. It wasn't something I heard in my environment. I wasn't religious. But I believed that is true. And so my story was different than what the doctor was saying to me that moment. My story was about life.